Once you get this in your mind, this is a French guy in Switzerland who's a lawyer and a pastor and is telling us about God. So very smart, very complicated, very intelligent man. I've read a lot of his writings, and it's very thick reading. It's almost like reading a legal brief. So as you go through some of these books and some of these pages, it takes you a while. It's very thick stuff. But he wrote a book called The Institutes of Christian Religion. It's a book that we take a lot of our information and how we begin to think about our faith today. Kind of relevant to today's conversation, this is what he thought about government and about religion in general, about Christianity. Number one up there is, contrary to some of the other reformers, Calvin had a high view of government. He thought government was actually good, and he found politics as useful. Some of you may not be in that boat right now. You may not think of politics as useful at all. But he thought of politics as useful, means to restrain evil, to promote good, and defend the gospel. So he was, in general, a fan of the political process. He also believed that, according to Romans 13, all civil authorities were ordained by God. Now, if you read Romans 13, the very first sentence says, for us to obey our authorities. And it's talking about Roman officials. It's our Christian duty to submit, again, there's that word submit, to the authorities as long as they were held accountable to God. Now, there's some argument to be had right now about whether our authorities are being held accountable to God or not. That's another conversation we could have at a later date. The last couple of things I just want to point out, Calvin was not an advocate for Christian government. I want you to think that through in comparison to today's politicians. Some might have heard the term religious right. Some might have heard how Christians or evangelicals are being leveraged for certain political opportunities. Calvin was not in favor of that. In fact, he was concerned with how Christians should submit themselves to the will of God individually, not politically. And lastly, Calvin understood politics as a useful tool to accomplishing the end goal, not necessarily being a piece of the process, but what it does in the end. So we talk about this. This is important because Calvin is one of those religious historical figures that our faith, those in this church, those in this body, our faith is built on. When you look at Presbyterian code and law and creed and everything else that goes in with this denomination, and really a lot of other denominations, we all subscribe to some of these thoughts. This was the basis of building some of our belief system, if you will. Now, this gets into the question of the day. As I sat this week, something that really kind of ground through my mind was, does Jesus really even care about politics? I mean, does he? What does it matter? And I kind of came up with the answer both yes and no. Yes, and I want you to think through this. When Jesus was on earth, he was caught between the politics of the temple. Remember the priests of the temple? There were people there who had a very distinctive political push to keep the Jews in line and to keep the Romans happy and to make sure that power was always there. The Jews themselves, the crowds, the people who wanted Jesus to become king and savior of the people, but perhaps in a violent manner or an overthrow. And then finally, the Romans. The Romans were the people, the government that was overseeing everyone. So Jesus definitely, I think, knew and was concerned about politics during that time. I also think he's concerned about politics during our time because he's concerned about people. He's concerned about relationships. He's concerned about us individually. He's concerned about sin. So I do believe Jesus is concerned about politics. However, no, because Jesus is the king of a different kingdom. I think a lot of times this is where we go back and forth and we want Jesus to be on our side. We will make sure that we all know that Jesus would have picked what we pick. Jesus would bless our particular decisions. Jesus certainly would have wanted us to do this and for the other party not to have done that. In fact, as you watch these attacks across the next week or two continue, it's amazing how many people will vote one way just out of spite of the other way someone else is voting. I'm watching this in Congress right now where people are losing the ability to use logic, to use reason, and they are continuing to make decisions emotionally based off of anger. This is where I think that our country is continuing to go off the rails. We need to come back onto the rails and consider why Jesus is calling us together. Jesus desires something different for our kingdom, and this is in John 17. This is an interesting chapter. So he prays for something, and I think you can probably guess what it is and where I'm going with this, but he prays for unity. I want you to describe and know that this particular spot in the Bible is right before Jesus is going to be crucified. And he is in the middle of a prayer with his Father, with God, the Almighty, the creator of all creation. And he could have prayed for anything. God, please change the world. God, please release me. God, please make me super strong. God, please give me all the wealth and gold to buy my way out of this. And he doesn't. All of those things that Jesus could have prayed for, he doesn't. And instead, he prays for unity. Now, that's a fascinating thing to pray for, but when you think about it, if you go back to the beginning of the Bible with Adam and Eve and God in the garden, before there was sin, you had utter, complete unity. They would walk through the garden without a care in the world, and they would have conversations together, God and Adam and Eve, and the world was good. There was no division, there was no anger, there was no malice, no hate. There was unity. So Jesus, again, is asking God to bring us back to that point in the garden through unity. I'm going to go through these just five parts of what unity looks like, and this is again through John chapter 17. And I'm going to pick out verse 11 here where Jesus prays, Holy Father, protect them so that they may be one as we are one. I like this. David Drum in his book points us out that this is unity, not uniformity. I think a lot of times, especially when we're in a religious body, we think that we should look like each other, act like each other, be like each other, and we point out those people that are different. And that's not what Jesus is praying for. I want you to read that again, the second part, so that they may be one as we are one. Jesus was not God. God was not Jesus. They were two separate entities. And this is where our head kind of explodes a little bit because, yes, Jesus and God were a part of the Trinity, which is, again, a singular thing, but also a multiple thing at the same time. And Jesus and God had a relationship between two people. And Jesus is saying, I am praying that people out there, those who would worship you, those who would love you, would have a relationship like we have a relationship, but not the same relationship. Because none of us are Jesus. We will never have that particular relationship with God, but we can have a relationship with God. The second part is this, out of verse 15. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. Now, that's an interesting request of Christ as well, because, man, it would have been awesome, right, to have been taken out of sin, to be 100% invited. It's like being invited to the best birthday party ever. And you are taken out of your regular mundane life and you are put into perfection, back into the Garden of Eden. But Jesus doesn't pray for that. He prays that we're protected from the Holy One, or from the evil one. Why? Why are we protected from the evil one and not taken out? Simply, again, because Jesus wants us to have unity together, to continue to share the message, the hope, the grace, the peace, the love that comes from following Christ, and to do it in unity. Number 3, out of verse 17, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. This is a hot topic today, right? What is truth? If you watch the debates, man, if you didn't know anything else and you dropped in from Mars and you watched the debates, I don't know what you would think, but you would see people yelling at each other and interrupting each other and screaming over each other and trying to convince everybody else that what they say is the truth. How do you deal with that? Well, the great thing is that there is a truth, and it's not popular in one sense to say that today, but there is a truth, a singular truth, and for years and decades and millennia, there has been a truth, and it's the truth that God has set aside, especially in Scripture. As he sets that truth aside, that is the truth we continue to go back to. We continue to investigate. We continue to hold other things against to see how they account for themselves or how they work. What Jesus is saying is, it's a substantive thing, not spineless. Sanctify them by the truth. Make them holy with your truth, because your word is the truth. You've given them some truth. You've given them some teeth to go back to the world and to hold themselves and others accountable to a reason or a truth. Again, I love this because Jesus is not praying again, please take me out of this violence, take me out of this world, but give my followers strength and ways to work their way through this sinful world. Number 4 out of verse 20, my prayer is not for them alone. I also pray for those who will believe in me through their message. I want you to think about this. Jesus is praying right here for not just his immediate followers, not just his disciples, not just the families that love him, not just the communities that have come to worship him, but Jesus is praying for those who will come after. That's you, that's me, that's everyone in this church, that's everyone in this community, that's everybody in the state of California, in the United States of America, in the world. Jesus is praying for all of us. Take that to heart. Jesus Christ actually prayed for you, spoke to his Father concerning you. It says it right there. That we might know the message that has been passed down through others. Jesus is praying that his message, his grace, his gospel, his goodness, his forgiveness is timeless, not time-bound to a particular generation or place. He's saying, dear God, may this go on forever. Lastly, 5 out of verse 22 and 23, I've given them the glory that you gave me. I want you to think about that for a moment. Jesus Christ is saying, the glory, the honor that you have bestowed upon me, I have given to them. Them meaning his disciples, them meaning the ones that passed down from the disciples, them meaning those who have come into contact and had a relationship with them, that they may be as one, again, as we are, that they are unified like God the Father and God the Son. I in them and you in me. I want you to think about that for a moment in human terms, even in a more scientific term. Today, there is, science has come a long way. Back even 50 years ago, there was really no way of proving who was a child of a father or mother, or who was a father or mother of a child. We have come to the point that we can test DNA, and literally there is me and you and me if we are related by blood. We are inside of each other. We are a part of each other. We share genetics. We share common traits. This is what Jesus is saying is, may we be that close that I am in you and you are in me, that we genetically are bonded, that we are together in heart, mind, soul, spirit, so that they may be brought to complete, again, circle this word, unity. Jesus sees the way forward out of everything we are experiencing today by coming together in unity instead of arguing or holding spiteful indifferences towards one another. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Jesus is calling us out, saying that people will know about God's love through us, through how we treat each other, how we decide to come together, how we love each other. It's the means to an end, but it's not the end. Jesus is asking for unity that everyone might know about God the Father. Now, let's talk about unity for just a quick moment. Unity does not mean that I have to vote the way someone else votes. Unity does not mean that I have to agree with a political ideology that someone else really loves. Unity means that I respect and love the other person despite the choices I disagree with. Doesn't mean I have to agree with them, but it means I still love them. If you look at these things, unity, not uniformity, public, not private, substantive, not spineless, timeless, not time-bound, the means to an end, but not the end, the message here that Jesus is praying, that he is asking his Father is for unity. Unity so that others may know and enjoy the love of God. That's an interesting request from Christ. Out of all the things right before his crucifixion that he could have requested, I know I would have requested something very selfish, like, God, please don't make me go through this. But Jesus instead put himself aside and requested for God's love for us, and that his love might be spread throughout the ages. As you think about your next conversation you have with someone, whether it's political, whether it's not political, think about the end result of what Christ is asking for here, and how you can continue to respect and love others despite disagreements. I'm convinced that I was watching the news this morning and watching commentary on even the confirmation of the new justice, not Chief Justice, but Justice in the Supreme Court. And I'm hearing these people talk about not voting one way or the other based simply upon their dislike or hatred of the other party. We have come to a point in this country where we are making poor decisions and choices because we are letting hate, we're letting sin and anger come between us. When in all reality, so much more could be done, so many wiser decisions could be made, so much more effective government could be had if people could respect each other, if they could be unified against sin and anger and greed, and be unified with their love, with their respect for each other. Some are going to say it's impossible to get there, and I'm going to argue that it's not. I have watched people that I thought would never come together in their lives put what was between them aside to come together and grow in love. Maybe right now you have an issue going on with your family or with friends or coworkers, and you're thinking to yourself, there's no way. I don't even want to talk to them right now. My challenge to you is to put those feelings aside. Again, you don't have to agree with what they are thinking or saying, but do you respect them? Do you love them? Can you help be with them, help them understand what the love of Christ is about, even while you disagree? I pray you can, as Christ himself prayed to God that you could as well. Let me close in prayer. As the band comes up, we're going to spend just one more week in this series. I'm kind of excited for next weekend. We're going to be so close to the election, and everybody's going to be at a fever pitch, and there's a great message coming. Again, as we spend this moment together, I pray that you think through what Christ himself prayed for you, how Jesus has invited you to be a part of a relationship with God in the same way that he had a relationship, so that we might operate in unity. Amen.
Let's sing one more song together. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song.